again and again and again. So this is only the beginning. I mean, it's obvious now, and everybody knows that we have facilities that are in need of repair. We've identified that over the years. We've had $6 million budgetary allocation to the rec center for quite some time. Yeah, and there are some things in the amendment that I'm not crazy about, but again, I think the idea of it being in the urban area with the first amendment, or first motion, and we got that back from staff, that the reason that they supported that was because of planning matters, water and sewer availability, additional costs to try to bring water and sewer out beyond the urban boundary. Plus, if you expand an urban boundary, we already know that there's difficulty in doing that. The province doesn't like it, and if we try to do it, it may hold things up further. They may require a population study. You know, all of these things will add costs and time to the project. But, like I said, in the spirit of compromise, I will go along with this, and we will get information back from staff that says, will it cost more money to take water and sewer out beyond the urban boundary? We will find out, you know, what the implications are in terms of a boundary adjustment, urban or rural, what the timelines are, what the costs are, that sort of thing. So in that regard, I guess we'll have more information coming back to us to enable us to make a better informed decision. And really, I should have said off the top, you know, my sincere thank you and appreciation to Councillor Columbus for bringing this forward. And I think with all of this detail, it will allow staff to bring us a lot of information, a lot of data, and I think we'll probably be swamped. We'll need a big chart to be able to compare one thing with the other and what the benefits are, and that type of thing. So I think I've said enough. I am going to support this. And could we have a recorded vote on the amendment?
I've already said that.
We've already said, okay. Yes. So thank you once again.
Do any other discussion on Councillor Sonnenberg, please, to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Councillor Columbus had brought forth just one line out of all this, I could support it. And that one line says that development or construction of any one component of a multi-use recreation facility can proceed as an individual standalone project. That's been my contention all along. I understand the need for improving our facilities, but I can't approve of a multi-acre brand new subdivision. Okay, let's deal with each one of these needs and facilities on an individual basis on service property that Norfolk County owns. To set aside 25 or 30 or 40 acres, or however much this is going to take, we're going to have to put in streets and sidewalks and water and sewers and parking and landscaping and on and on. We are going to be so far in debt, by then we won't even have a shovel in the ground to build a facility yet. We're going to spend countless millions just preparing the site. I have always been in favor of having this dealt with on an individual basis, one facility at a time, on property that Norfolk County already owns. Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm wondering if we're able to ask staff a question at this point.
If it relates to the amendment, absolutely.
It does.
Yes, sir.
And my question is to the treasurer. I know there's a report coming forward that deals with development charges that you've been working on. So in the development charge study, because we're replacing or could be replacing two of our current facilities, would some of this be covered by development charges? I know in the other report that we had, it was completely debt funded. are we able to do that through development charges?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height. That would definitely be something we would bring to the development charge consultants to find out if we can use any part of this project that is growth related. Whatever percentage of this that would be determined as growth related would therefore be used from the development charge reserve. And I suspect that would be a very small amount, given the reserve balances that we do have in our development charges. But it's definitely a possibility, and that is definitely on the radar to look into.
So do you need council direction for that? And that's question number one. Question number two is, because our reserves are depleted, but DC reserves are different, are they not? Because development goes forward every day.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, to answer your first question, a specific resolution to look into development charges is not needed. That is part of the finance function to determine the best financing or funding for projects. And once the project gets to the approval state, the funding would be outlined at that point. As far as the development charge reserve balances, it's a timing situation. We would have to determine what part of this is growth related to which reserve, because we have multiple development charge reserves, what the balance is in that reserve, and then if we can go into a deficit situation and then perhaps repay it from another development charge through a loan program. There's multiple opportunities there. However, the first step is to determine which part of this project, what percentage of it is growth related, and then fund it that way through the development charges.
Okay, one more thing on that one, and that's, these are enhancements to existing assets, or would this be like an MBI, new budget initiative? Because there was some development charges go to recreation now. I'm assuming that they're going to the rec center in Talbot Gardens.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, I would have to look at the development charge bylaw to see what portions of those development charges are going to which project. I don't have it in front of me right now, or which projects have been identified.
Okay, and are there any placeholders in the capital budget over the next 10 years for any of this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, no, there is not. I believe we were waiting for this debate to happen, and for the 2019 capital budget, it would definitely be there. Having said that, there are other capital, recreation-related capital budgets items in the 2018 to 2027 10-year capital plan, which I'm sure would be adjusted after we get more information.
Okay, thank you for that. If you would, Mr. Mayor, I do have some questions for Mr. Cridlin.
Go ahead. And the reason I hesitated, I do want to say that I believe it was 2008 or 9, there was $5.4 million earmarked in the capital budget for renovation, expansion, whatever you want to call it, of the recreational complex at the fairgrounds. And based on that, it was around 2012-13 that Fred Galloway and Lee Associates did a 70,000 recreational study of our existing facilities and where we should go. I still have that, as many of you do. And I believe at a capital budget meeting a year ago or last fall that I think there was a motion approved that that 5.4 be reduced to $2 million. Is my memory still, Mr. Brunton? No, I don't think it was zero. Councilor Brunton, you made the motion, if I may. Thank you. So there is $2 million from the original 5.4 earmarked. The money's not in the bank, it's earmarked. I think that's where we were, Doug, if I may. Councilor Brunton, thank you.
Earmarked
So I
for
think there was-
Talbot?
But the treasurer is right. No,
Right.
in that line item for the renovation of the pool facility.
Right.
Yeah, the Talbot's a different item.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr.
Yeah, I
Mayor.
just wanted that. Go ahead through to
Yep.
Mr. Cridlin. Fire
Now,
away.
On item G, under Councillor Columbus's motion, it says here that council directs staff to investigate the option of a twin pad and compare costs to repair and upgrade of Talbot Gardens and the Simcoe Rec Center. Now, shouldn't we do the same thing for the pool, or is that geared just towards the arenas, or is that including the entire rec center pool and arenas. Probably Councillor Columbus could ask that, or answer that question, and then I have one.
Councillor Columbus, you wish to
President.
respond?
Mr. Mayor, I was focusing on the rec center and Talbot Gardens with that because I felt that the pool was really in need of replacement. That's my reasoning. Whereas I thought that perhaps Talbot Gardens and the rec center could be repaired.
So that's a bit confusing. So if it's, we're going to look at standalone facilities, yet we're not going to look at rebuilding on the same footprint as the rec center, say we build a new aquatic center, we're eliminating that area with this motion?
I believe that that is a decision that has to be made down the road once we get the cost analysis done on each of these components.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you for that. And my question to Mr. Cridlin, have we sought partnerships with private or not-for-profit sectors for the operation of the indoor recreation facilities?
Thank you, Martin. Through the mayor to Councillor Height. No, at this point, we haven't. It would be something that would definitely come into play as if we do move on from tonight further down the road, but as of now, we've had no direction on where we're headed, so it was a little premature to approach different groups.
Okay, with that, have we sought any public input for proposals for alternative uses for the Talbot Gardens or the rec center?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height. Indirectly, we've had a few people approach us with some ideas and concepts. However, until we know where we're going and get direction, we have nothing official on the books or to go that route.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask about the motion, the item number H. It says
Yes.
here, and that staff conduct a cost analysis of each component of a proposed multi-use rec facility for consideration. The cost analysis, it's not going to appear in the capital budget. I think we should spell it out. I'd prefer the wording that went like this, is that staff to initiate a business plan for the multi-use rec space, including capital and operating cost requirements, and the creation of a capital project within the 10-year capital budget, and if required, and to be included in the new DC charges report.
Do you wish to respond? No, only if you wish.
Could I ask the clerk to see if that would be in line? Is that in close proximity to what I've got worded here?
Sorry, Councillor Height there. I was following, but I missed that there. Would you mind? So it was.
Councillor Height, it's item H, is perhaps wanting to expand on that about operating costs, et cetera. Do you want to just repeat somewhat what you said so we can get a response, please?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Basically, it would replace it, and it would say that council directs staff to initiate a business plan for the multi-use recreation space, including capital and operating cost requirements, and the creation of a capital project within the 10-year capital budget, and to be included in the new DC charges report or investigation. I'm not sure how that word's messing with me.
Through you, it doesn't seem to be contrary. It's obviously a lot more detailed than what the councillors put forward here. I see the treasurer's got his hand.
Mr. Johnson, can you help? There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height. I believe you started to say investigate. If we could have that in there rather than having it as part of the DC report. If it's part of the DC report, we're trying to get that done over the next few months, and we just won't have enough information to have the details of the recreation facility in the bylaw. However, we can investigate the growth components and what kind of DC charges we are legally able to have related to it. And the other question I have is, you mentioned the capital plan. Are you specifically saying the 2019 to 2028 capital plan? And that obviously has to rely on if we have estimates of that facility ready by, I believe it would be September of 2018.
Right, it would be just a placeholder. We know roughly we're looking at $60 million, is what I assume. And to get back to the DC charges report, it says, and to be, how I have mine, and to be included in the new DC charges report. You don't like that word, you're looking to be the possibility of being included?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because of the timing of the DC report, we hope to have that presented to council over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So because of the timing of the recreational facility and the details around it, I'm not sure if our consultants would get enough information on what we want in order to include that into the report as a concrete item in the bylaw. However, what I do recommend is we can definitely get some information from our DC consultant on what options we have, whether through the legislation, what different avenues we have related to DC charges and the recreational complex.
That's not helping me with the wording. And with such a short term, because DC studies, as I understand it, can only come back every so often. And I think a big thing for the funding of this is going to be development charges. New people move to Norfolk, we get money that way, and that's going to help pay for this.
Thank you. You can get a response. I kind of want to bring it back a little bit. I fully recognize that down the road, if this is to move ahead, we're going to have to, in the future, figure out how something like this is financed. So, you know, you go ahead and respond to it, but I'd like to kind of draw it back to the amendment here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height. The DC study that we're doing this year is actually before the every 5 years a municipality is required to have a DC, a new DC bylaw. And we are, I believe, 2.5, 3 years into our existing one, and we decided to do it early because we wanted to identify more projects that we can get development charges with. And that was part of our reserve report last July, and as a strategy to, a funding strategy for our capital projects. When we pass the new bylaw this year, which is what we're planning on doing, and perhaps in 2019 we come across a project that is growth related, at that point we can investigate whether we use development charges for it or not, and then we make sure the following bylaw incorporates it. So there is the possibility of within that 5-year term to have new projects, not necessarily identified in the bylaw, that we can use DC funding for, and then we can make sure that's in the next upcoming bylaw.
Okay, so we don't need direction, and you're okay with that moving forward? I'll take that last "and" out, Mr. Clerk, if you don't mind, to be included in the new DC charges report, and we'll hope it just gets in there.
Okay, you finish up. Anything further, Councillor Height?
Oh, absolutely. Is that one good?
Continue, you have the floor.
Okay. So Councillor Columbus and Oliver are okay with that amendment? Or, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was waiting till he finished writing it, and then I was going to get him to read it.
Okay.
But if you want to pause, if you're ready? Yeah, just so I can...
Perhaps it's quite lengthy if you want to just read it one last time to make sure I capture it.
Thank you.
No problem, Andy. And that council directs staff to initiate a business plan for the multi-use recreational space, including capital and operating cost requirements, and the creation of a capital project within the 10-year capital budget. That'll put the placeholder in for us. We should have did that last year.
Councillor Columbus, are you okay with that?
Mr. Mayor, I have no problem with it. It's more detailed than what I was looking for, but it's probably in order to have
Okay,
it.
Councillor
Thank
Wells, are you okay if that's added? Anything further, Councillor Height?
On this topic or my next one?
Well, we're taking that as a friendly amendment because mover
Okay.
seconder's allowing it.
Okay.
So let's move on, please.
G, and that council direct staff to investigate the option of a twin ice pad and compare cost to repair/upgrade of Talbot Gardens and the Simcoe Rec Center. And staff seek public input and proposals for alternate uses for the surplus sites.
You wish to add that?
Yep.
Councillor Columbus, add that staff seek alternative uses.
I have no issue with that. I would support it.
Councillor Wells? He's fine with that.
Yeah. And what
And
I,
we'll add that to G.
yeah, and what I mean by that, Mr. Mayor, is should we proceed, what are we going to do with those buildings?
Okay,
We might
I
as
got
well
it.
look now.
Got it. Continue.
Begin the decommissioning. And the very last one I'm proposing is to add O at the very end of it.
To add O,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Do you want me to just give it to, instead of reading it to Andy 10 times?
You want to bring it up? You want to look at it? Thank you, sir. We'll let the clerk.
Okay, Andy. It says here, and that council directs staff to explore and seek expressions of interest to partner with the county who are capable of and willing to co-invest in the property, design, and construction components of either the aquatic or non-aquatic amenities, including options to partner in the maintenance and/or operation of these facilities. This is basically getting the YMCA, maybe some not-profits or not-for-profits and some other organizations involved to help us either design and build or operate it. It's usually done through an expression of interest. You post it out there, we'll get some help, is what I'm hoping for.
Okay, anything further?
That's it.
Councillor Columbus, add that as item O.
Yes, I don't mind that.
Wells, you're
It
okay?
Perhaps
Yep.
is a bit premature, but I know other facilities are financed by the YMCA.
Okay.
And is there a YWCA? I don't know.
Anyone else want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, if you're not finished, my
It could be
apologies.
actually, part and parcel of the business plan as
Yes.
to corporate
They're connected, there's
finance.
no question about that. And is there any other discussion on the amendment before us? And we're going to just review, if there isn't anything else, those additions. Is there anything else to come before? Okay. Everything is printed up to N. Andy, do you want to tell us about C again? There's 4. I want them read one last time, and then we're going to call the vote. Go ahead. Have you got C? I can read it. You got it? The senior center, the other users, space.
Okay, yes,
I know you've written them separately.
C is, and that the senior center be replaced, and that Simcoe, and that the current seniors be consulted regarding the space requirements. Oh, sorry, let me just make sure I'm on the, yeah, sorry.
You're right, you got it.
And that the Simcoe Senior Center be replaced, and that seniors utilizing the current senior center be consulted regarding space requirements with all other occupants of the current facility.
That's all that I had written. G is the one we just got about the alternative use for Talbot Gardens. Well, I guess Talbot Garden and its recreation center.
Sorry, there, they got them out of order.
You can do them in your order if you like.
So we have the I'll start with the most recent
Go
one.
ahead.
The addition one of O, council directs staff to explore and seek expressions of interest to partner with the county who are capable of and willing to co-invest in the property design and construction components of either the aquatic or non-aquatic amenities, including options to partner in the maintenance and operation of these facilities. So that's that one.
The last two were the twin
Yeah.
on number G.
H, and that H is the addition of and that staff be directed to investigate capital and operational cost of all aspects of the multi-use facility to be in the development of a business case for the facilities, and that the costs be included in the 10-year capital costs.
And the last one is the alternate use.
Yeah, and that
Take your time.
just misplaced that one there a second ago. Have it. I believe that one, sorry, I just misplaced it there a second ago. I
okay.
believe that one was, and that the sites be determined for alternate
That is
uses.
correct. Number G. Okay?
I think you missed operating. Did you just say capital costs?
Staff be directed to investigate capital and operational costs of all aspects of the multi-use facility in the development of a business case for the facilities, and that the cost be included in the 10-year capital costs.
It's number H. Any other discussion? Councillor Columbus?
Mayor, I'm just wondering, we're putting a lot of work on Mr. Cridlin and Mr. James' departments here. The date is May 30th, 2018. Is that an appropriate date, Mr. Cridlin, Mr. CAO, or how are we going to handle that? Because there's a lot of work here for staff.
Through the mayor, I will start, and probably Mr. Cribbs will finish. I've taken notes here, gained a lot of ground. The list is lengthy. Till I can digest this, I think that the May 30th date is very much premature. I don't think we could get all of this information to you. One point I was going to bring up, and I'm not sure if now's the time, there was the original $50,000 that we had from the Legacy Fund for the consultant. I can see some of these items, all of them again until we speak with SLT, or I can wrap my head around them. I can see some of this is going to take some outside services, which again, will speed things up. However, there's a process in hiring them. So I guess what I leave it as, I think the May date is undoable at this point. And if I had a minute to think, or perhaps Mr. Cribbs can comment, maybe we can come up with a date that we think is feasible.
This is ultimately an undertaking larger than any the Corporation of Norfolk County has undertaken in a generation, both literally and figuratively. Certainly, the end of May is not a realistic outcome, but even with professional help, the summertime would be exceptionally difficult to achieve either. I think the best advice I think we can provide to council at this point in time is give us a little bit of time to talk amongst ourselves and to come back with a strategy for you. We can devote resources to making this the top priority, but that will have very real impacts on our capacity to deliver a number of other reports and items. I point to the development charges study as fundamentally important to the future of this corporation, but more importantly of this county geographic space and community, as one other item that requires a lot of staff, senior staff time and focus. To that extent, if we have some time, we can come up with a plan. Mr. Cridland is correct. We cannot execute all of this. We don't have all of the appropriate skills at the staff level to do all of these items. So some help from some consultants will be necessary. But I think there is a way for us to find what can be done and not to do a number of things simultaneously, to have teams of staff members working on different aspects and to farm out that which we either cannot do or cannot do efficiently. That's a sort of a lengthy answer, but this is complex, and I think it's going to require our best efforts and a multifaceted effort at that. And reports can be brought back in stages with key insights we've learned, or to deal with specific variables, and that may well be the right way to go. Thank you.
I want to stay to this amendment here as best we can. Councillor Oliver, I don't want to start going off on all the things that we should be planning in the future tonight.
Just
They
a
will
real-
unfold
real quick one,
as
Mr.
we go
Mayor.
if this gets gets approved. Go ahead, Councillor.
I was just
Oliver.
going to remind us, if you actually look at item K, which is, I think, the one we're now talking about with a date attached, that was only to bring the closed session report regarding land parcels.
Land sites, that's
It didn't
correct.
deal with any of these other major undertakings that would have to be part of this. So maybe too tight even for just the land parcel report, but
Let's,
that's all that's talking about there.
let's shoot for it. There was another hand. Did you want to the amendment, please?
Question to Mr. Cribbs, if I may.
Yes.
You outlined your scenario there, but would this have any impact on the grant application if we, I assume that comes later on now then, am I correct?
I don't think I can speak for all staff, but I am certainly convinced in my own mind that the way forward on this file, if it is the will of council for us to proceed at all, but assuming it is the will of council, is to line up every single duck. You put in one grant application. To understand, there are entire civil servants at the federal and provincial level whose jobs are nothing other than dealing with grant applications. That is how they earn a living. The application has to be entirely complete. And a complete application, it's a 100-page application. You fill it out, it's 300 or 400 or 500 pages long. Seriously. And what's the first question? What's the address? You have location, you have design, you have its contents, you have who the community partners are. Everything is done, and the financing is the very last piece. So to answer your question, I know later on and earlier when things went off the rails back in January, much of the debate was because staff are suggesting we start with location and then we work out from there. And reasonable people can disagree on what comes first. But I believe that to succeed in this project, if it is the will of council to proceed at all, we have to have every duck lined up, and that includes location and content, and then all the partners. An entire vision, an entire package that is shovel ready, but for the money, and that finances are dead last. We may have to think about it en route. In fact, obviously we do, but it's the very last piece of the puzzle. All the others come first. And that is why staff gave the advice they did.
And that's been my major concern from day one. I don't want to be pushed into this by the government or the province to spend money by a certain date, because that's where these things way overrun. And so that's where I say the procedure and how we proceed is very important. So, thank you.
Mr. Clerk, are you ready to do the recorded vote on the amendments? And you have outlined them, so I think everyone's pretty clear where we're going here on the vote as to what we're voting on. Mr. Clerk, turn it over to you, please.
Councillor Height.
No.
Councillor Geisens. Yes. Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Councillor Oliver.
Yes.
Councillor Black.
Yes.
Councillor Brunton.
Yes.
Councillor Wells. Yes. Councillor Sonnenberg. No. Mayor Luke.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Now, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Just before we recess for 5 minutes and get ready for our thank you, our public meetings, our planning items. So we have 3 of them. Thank you, Councilor Brown. Just want to make a couple of comments. You know, I want to thank everybody for their input and their work that we started back early last fall on this. And I just want to take a minute and say that it's... Oh, and I need to, wow, thank you for procedure. We passed the amendment. Now I would like to, we don't need this recorded, I don't believe. You want to do that too? Let's do that on the motion as amended now. We passed the amendment. Now on the main amended motion of Councillor Columbus's.
Yeah, this is
well,
the important one.
That's why it's a motion, but it's really an amendment to the reconsideration. Go ahead.
Councillor Sonnenberg. No. Councillor Wells. Yes. Councillor Brunton. Councillor Black.
He's absent. Go ahead.
Councillor Oliver. Yes. Councillor Columbus. Yes. Councillor Geisens. Yes. Councillor Height.
No.
Mayor Luke.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. So the motion is carried. Now I'm free to just finish up. I want to say that I'm well aware that this issue, whether it's unfortunate or not, do you agree, it has done somewhat of a polarizing of the county. There are people who have called me that are dead set against new recreational facilities wherever in the county. I get that. We're not going to be able to please everybody. But as I say, I don't know where we're going to end up, but I know one thing. We have been on a path to replace some of the aging 50-year-old, 130-year-old recreational facilities that just happen to be located in the former town of Simcoe. And that's been the plan. You know, Delhi needed a renovated library and an addition. We spent $2 million, and they have it, and I think it's good. Not just for Delhi, but for the county. Same thing in Port Dover. We either move ahead in this county or we move behind. We don't stay the same. You're either going to go ahead or you're going to fall far behind. I think in recreation facilities, in my opinion, we've fallen behind in the last 17, 18 years. What is not in this, obviously, is any reference to an application for upper tier funding. I don't deal with that tonight. That's down the road. But we are going to have staff come forward, and we're going to have to figure out what's in there. The ministry sent me the Canada Building Fund application for the one-third funding. It's 106 pages long. This guy is right. You need the 911 number, the postal code, and a description of the property. That's just the start. And it goes on and on and on. It's kind of a neat, this is the manual. And it goes through and tells you how to fill it out. When you fill out the first part right, they give you a PIN number. You're not going to hand out millions of dollars unless it's going to be serious and beneficial to everyone. And once you get your PIN number, the way you go, you do the business plan. If you don't do it right, you don't go to the next box. If you don't have the sponsorship, you don't go to the next box, etc., etc., etc. I'm glad I'm not filling this out. Probably wouldn't make it. So we need to be aware that down the road, I didn't want to bring that up tonight. The other thing I think, if I may just quickly, is to say in moving forward, the other thing is, there's no mention in here of a consultant. We're planning $30, $40 million facility, perhaps, or standalones. No respect to Mr. Curlin, he's not hired to build $30 and $40 and $50 million hubs. That's not his job. We will need a consultant. We had $50 million, we still have $50 million set aside. We're going to need somebody that's going to plan this and do it right and lead us through it. If you're going to spend $40 million, you better figure out, or 30 or 20 or even 8. You better have somebody there that's been involved in this, knows what they're doing, so that when you're done, you got something that we can all be proud of. So I've said too much for tonight. We're not here to plan anything tonight other than to say to staff, green light, let's get rolling on this. And all of this stuff will unfold as we go. And what's meant to be is meant to be. No upper tier funding. I don't think we're going to see a $50 million hub all in one shot. I don't think it's going to happen. How long will it take to get this? If this is ready to be submitted by the end of this year or 1 year hence, I will be one happy person. And I will make this available to anybody that wants a copy. I will deliver it to you. Give me a call, send me an email. I will give it to you. Okay? Because this is not a 3-month project to get this ready. This will be a year, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Let's have a 5-minute recess. Thank you. I have no idea how long this process is. I was told 1 to 2 years to get your ducks in a row, 3 to 5 years to go. Well, 2 to 4, 2 to 5, so, you know. Like there's-
We got through that pretty well, eh?
I figured it out. Why would he put all those amendments and then vote against it?
I know, it seems like a waste of time.
David, I now officially open the public meetings held under the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. I advise those in attendance that the Ontario Municipal Board or the local planning tribunal has the power under the Planning Act to dismiss an appeal to either a zoning bylaw and/or an official plan amendment. If the appellant does not make oral submissions at this public meeting or does not make written submissions to Norfolk County Council before the zoning bylaw is passed and/or before the official plan amendment is adopted. Gentlemen, if you would turn to page 97, we have 3 public meetings tonight. We will deal with the first one, which starts on page 97. This is Staff Report 1835. An application has been received to amend the Norfolk County Official Plan to permit a surplus farm dwelling severance of a new single detached dwelling. P&B Van Houten Farms Limited, 7 Derek Van Houten Farms Limited, and Agent Civic Planning Solutions, Inc. has put forth the application affecting the lands described as 172 Wilson Ave. We're in the Delhi area. Mr. Matt Vaughn, we are pleased to have you here to present your report. So I will turn things over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. An application has been received to amend our official plan to sever a surplus farmhouse dwelling that was constructed 3 years ago. Currently, our policy in our official plan today is that the dwelling would need to have been constructed prior to 1978. As council knows, they've adopted a new official plan policy with a 10-year rolling date, and today that is with the province. The property location is at 172 Wilson Avenue. The official plan designation is agricultural, and the zoning is also agricultural. We have received an objection by a local resident. And just to give council just a little bit of a reminder in regards to the official plan update and review that has been adopted. I'm going to show you just a couple series of maps and a table that was presented to council during our official plan review process. This is a map that just shows how many parcels would be capable of being severed off as a surplus farmhouse dwelling severance should we have a 10-year rolling date. And this map, which to me looks very similar, this is what it looks like with no date. Where the difference is really shown here is when we show it in a graph. And as you can see, with a 10-year rolling date, we're looking at around 3,300 severances. With having no date, that almost doubles the number of surplus farmhouse dwelling severances that could occur in the county. And that, I believe, is one of the reasons why council chose to have a 10-year rolling date as opposed to no date, which is really what's being proposed here today. So in terms of the policy compliance, the PPS does discourage lot severance and really only allows it through surplus farmhouse dwelling severance. While the PPS doesn't have a date in it, we do believe that the intent of the policy is to continue to discourage agricultural fragmentation. In terms of our own official plan policy, it's not in conformity with our existing OP, and it's not in conformity with what has been adopted with the province today. And also, as I've already stated, the 10-year rolling date is the date that council has chosen, and the date that we've decided with our official plan. Therefore, based on the policy review, planning staff are recommending refusal of this application. And just a reminder, we have received the objection. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Turn that microphone on. Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. Any questions from council? To staff. Councillor Oliver?
Very much, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Matt, for your report. I think I know the answer to this already, but I will pose the question. Regardless of whether we, as a council, had directed staff to have no rolling date or the 10-year rolling date that we have adopted and we're now waiting for provincial approval, it doesn't result in any new residential development, does it? Because in every case where it would be a surplus farm dwelling to be severed, the remaining portion of the farm property is sterilized in the sense that we put the zoning restriction not allowing new residential development on it. Am I not correct in saying that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. What ends up happening is every time there's a surplus farmhouse dwelling severance, the remainder of the farm gets sterilized, per se. There's a zoning provision put on the remainder farm that, so that the farmer wouldn't be able to construct another single detached dwelling. Now, that's something that's put on if there are no other severance opportunities for surplus farmhouse dwellings. There are properties in the county that do have more than one single detached dwelling, but generally speaking, you're correct.
Right. And my only other question, Mr. Mayor, if I might, on page 98, page 2 of our report, the 1, 2, 3, third paragraph, where it does say, should this application be approved and a severance is approved in the future, presumably by committee of adjustment, and here's the question that I'm asking, the existing greenhouse will need to be removed or altered. Would that be just in order